All right. Yeah, it tells you recording is in progress.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So Debbie Tan has actually worked with me personally. So I used to play dodgeball with Debbie and her sister. But then randomly, my daughter, when she was born, she had jaundice when she was born, and we had to go back into the hospital, to Tarzana Hospital. And it was all night long. And then Debbie comes in bright at 7 a.m. in the morning and says, hi. And all I can say holding my baby is dodgeball. That's it. And I was like, wait, I know you. And so she was our nurse for the next 12 hours, taking care of my daughter. So again, have personal experience. She's a good friend, but also she was my nurse. She was my nurse for my daughter. So she's amazing. She's a pediatric nurse. And we're in for a treat to be able to hear kind of about what her job is. So Debbie, how it works is my students are going to kind of hear about you, and then they're going to
Okay.
type in the chat, and then I will read back the questions to you. And then they can refer to this at a later time. That's why we record it. So
Okay.
so
Fantastic.
you're on. Go for it, Debbie. Tell us a little bit about your profession and what you do, which is pretty awesome.
So, well, thanks for having me and inviting me. I've been a pediatric nurse for a little over 17 years now. Majority of my time as a nurse has been in the hospital, inpatient. I did some, outpatient stuff and worked with postpartum, which is, after moms deliver, but that's like the extent of my adult practice, I guess. So it's always been with kids, and up until recently, until March of this year, I've become a school nurse. So that's definitely, it's been different, especially with the climate of COVID right now. A lot of the kids last year were at home, and then, they brought back in person this year, as you guys are well aware. So it's definitely been different. It's different than, being in the hospital for sure, but it's a new challenge, and it kind of just fell in my lap. And apparently school nursing is like the dream job. So I had to try to tackle it and see if it was for me. So jury's still out though, because it's new and different, but
You're not in the hospital currently.
I'm not anymore. It's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's probably a major change for you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's again with COVID, we're up to 3 nurses in our school district. It's just because the COVID stuff alone, it's a full-time job. I don't know if anybody's really familiar like with what goes on, if there's like an exposure in school, like you have to contact trace, and then we're in charge of actually testing kids if it's the right situation. So it's called modified quarantine. I don't know if this happens in the college setting, but if the circumstances are right, they don't have to miss any school. We just have to test them twice, 10 days following the exposure. And thank goodness we're finding that basically no transmission is happening in schools. It's what's happening outside, right? We can only control the environment for our 6 to 8 hours in school, but there's the whole weekends, and people are getting a little bit more generous with their time, and like, oh, they had a play date and then so and so got it. So it's a little bit different. It's not just like the vision and hearing screens, or IEPs, which is like an extensive education plan for a student, like if they needed extra, like a special ed student, for example, or just type of accommodations for in school. So it's totally different. It's totally different right now.
For you, it's totally different. Absolutely. I mean, because you were in the hospital, and like, so are you liking the difference? Are you kind of still getting used to it? Where are you at in the process?
Yeah, I definitely miss being in the hospital. Again, like, because most of my time and what I know, is there, and that's where my comfort level was really. Being just like with patients, and even last year it was a crazy time with COVID because, it was the adult population really that was getting hit with it. So thank goodness we didn't have like a lot of pediatric patients, but the expectation was, and of course, like I wanted to help, but because there was such an influx of adult patients, and where everyone was opening emergency ICUs, this time last year, so we were sent just to like help out the ICU nurses, and even in like other parts of the hospital, because they were so slammed with patients. So it was the ending of my inpatient career was, I guess, on a high note, because the curve was going down, but now I'm at a different forefront for COVID. So it's like I was kind of on the reactive side of it before. Now I'm like the proactive side, kind of education with parents, and now we're getting into a time where like kids 5 and over are going to be able to get vaccinated. So like that's a whole new thing, and everyone of course is like hesitant and stuff, but because of really the way the world is right now with a pandemic, it's prevention is the best thing. So I don't know how I don't know if that's like too much to go into, but again, it's like it's more of a public health standpoint now, instead of this what I was used to in a a small community hospital, and kind of where we were, and I had a lot of experience on the other side of it, but where we were was it's a nicer area, and parents are more educated, so it was like a different type of clientele. But I did do a lot of time in county, and that was the poorer side, and things like that. So I just miss being around like fellow nurses. I think that's like one thing. And I see a lot of well children now, and that's like really fun to do, but also, being like one-on-one with patients, it's different, because I know a handful of the kids that are in and out of the office all day, but I also I cover basically 1,700 students. So it's not as, compared to other districts, it's quite small, but I don't have, that one-on-one kind of time that I was able to, do before. So it is very different, but I love it. And I think, if it didn't work out, I'd definitely go back to the hospital, but I'm gonna give this a go. And the schedule is definitely great. And to those future,
you get to hang out with your daughter more.
yeah, for sure. So it's there's definitely pros and cons to it, but it's hard to gauge, because it's such a special time in school nursing, because the expectations are so different. But it's good, we're learning.
Yeah. So are you at a couple different schools, and are you with LA Unified?
No, so I'm in, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Edwards Air Force Base, all the way in the high desert. So there's 3 schools on base, which I'm at one of the base schools right now, and then there's 2 other schools in the district. It's called Muroc Joint Unified in Boron. So there's 5 schools total, and yeah, there's 3 of us, but we're all kind of we have the schools that we cover, but it's all hands on deck most of the time, because again, with COVID or whatever, what have you, so testing.
You guys testing your students once a week as well?
So we are not doing like regular surveillance testing, which is the weekly testing. We do surveillance testing on our athletes, because football is close contact, volleyball, although all like indoor sports, everything indoors have to wear masks. But I feel like it was, a good call on our side to do so, just because, they're together so often. And we've had like breakouts in like on various teams. So it was just better to, stay on top of that. And then again, like when we offer modified, we'd offer a, testing to anybody who wants to stay in school. So you don't have, to be in school, you don't have to do the testing if you didn't want to, but you'd have to be out of school on quarantine for 10 days. So navigating like all the protocols and the guidelines from, the county has been fun because they're, constantly updating, not huge changes, but, just the way you can approach keeping everybody in school. And that's like the main focus to keep the kids in school. So hopefully we won't be shutting down anymore.
Definitely been interesting. I mean, I've been consulting with several schools here in the Valley, and the kids have been actually really good about wearing their masks, ironically enough. And I think you're right that and granted too, Los Angeles, I've of course been watching this as well. The Los Angeles numbers are going down quite a bit. So in general, and I think it's because we're still wearing masks, what I mean?
Absolutely.
We're all wearing masks in our classroom right now. So it's part of what we're still doing, and how this is kind of happening. So I want to open it up to my students' questions. So if you guys have questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat, please, for Debbie. And it can be related about nursing or just her specifically. Again, she's a pediatric nurse and she's done both. So she's worked in the hospital setting as well now in schools. So if you have questions for her, please go ahead and type those in, and then we'll get into that in a second. So all right, here we go. First question is from Tatum. She says, how many hours did you usually work in the hospital a week?
So most hospitals now are 12 hours. So you would do, like as a full-time nurse, you'd work 3 12-hour shifts. I did work at a hospital where it was 8 hours. So that was, 5 days a week, 8 hours. And then I feel like most hospitals now, because it's more like financially, I think it's a little cheaper to do the 12 hours, but most of the time, like your full-time position is like the 36 hours, and then anything over that is overtime. And you're required usually to work, it's like 4 weekend days a month, and then there's, mandatory holidays, and you get, just depending on what hospital you work at, usually it's like 14 vacation days a year, and then if you accumulate more, you can, every hospital is a little bit different as far as that goes, but that's usually the work schedule. And most hospitals, they're pretty good about like self-scheduling, so you can make your own schedule, and that's like the nice thing about nursing. It's pretty flexible.
Yeah, for sure. And so with COVID, were you getting a lot of overtime?
Oh man, so me personally, I like they were basically throwing money at us because it was so terrible. Staff is getting sick. They're hiring, travelers from all around the country, but there still wasn't enough to meet the needs. So a lot of people were working, like RTs or respiratory therapists were working basically like 14 days in a row because nobody could work, right? And I always said, like, if it was, I absolutely needed to, I would come. But because, for my protection and my family's protection, like, I didn't think it was worth it to work extra. And at that time, like, if you wanted to work, they would send you anywhere, and a lot of nurses were making a lot of money. I mean, actually, everyone was making a lot of money who wanted to, but it was, a give or take. So I mean, there's a lot of overtime to be made in general. I think, and even in this time,
Absolutely, yeah. All right, next question. I'll go to Brianna's question. She says, what inspired you to become a pediatric nurse?
Yeah, I didn't think I wanted to be a nurse at all. My mom was a nurse and she was like, I will pay for your nursing school. It's 2 years. And if you want to do anything else, at least you have a job so you can pay for whatever else you want to do. And I was like, okay, like that's fair enough. And I always knew I wanted to work with kids. I just have always loved kids. But when, when you're going through your nursing program, a lot of, your teachers or professors will tell you, don't get stuck to the idea of working in one part of nursing, because there's so many things. And when I graduated, you just kind of apply, and especially now you kind of apply wherever you can. If they have a new grad program, great, because that means they're really putting a lot of time and investing a lot of time in you, to make sure you're prepared to work 100% as a nurse when you're out of your program.
Can you
And
explain what a new grad program is? Because I don't think my students know what that is.
oh, sure. So a new grad program is